The first thing we want to talk about that we're super stoked about is basically the baby brother of our flagship audio interface called Matrix, now Matrix Studio. Matrix is the hallmark of that product is incredible flexibility, routing, Pro Tools connectivity, IP audio, and then Yukon connectivity, being able to actually control it from something like the S4 or an Avid control or other Yukon-powered devices. So there's a lot about this that inherits from the flagship Matrix product. So we're super excited to have Matrix Studio we're showing at the show. Let's dig into it a little bit, kind of show you what's up there. As I said, IP audio, 64 channels of Dante, 16 analog line inputs, 16 analog line outputs, 2 precision mic preamplifiers, 2 instrument inputs, 16 channels of ADAT I/O, dedicated monitor outputs in addition to the 16 analog line outputs. We'll talk about that when we get to the monitoring section a little bit. And then obviously 64 channels of DigiLink, direct connectivity between either one HDX card, 64 channels, or multiple HDX or HD native systems from one box. So a lot of I/O in a small package, tons of flexibility. So let's talk about that flexibility a little bit here. And this is where it starts to get interesting. It has a router built into it, so I can take any of those mic or line inputs into the box, and I can send them multiple destinations. Let's say ADAT, to another rig via Dante, to another Pro Tools rig via DigiLink. I can actually mult all those sources, and it gives me a ton of flexibility with which what I'm doing in the studio. And especially think about interconnecting multiple Pro Tools systems and then other rooms that have a full matrix. This is a great piggyback for additional rooms or additional post-production types of editorial or mix environments. As I said, Yukon is really the backbone of our Surface technology. It's an open protocol that allows us to, with as simple as an iPad, we can literally bring up the whole monitor profile from this hardware to monitor stereo or even all the way up to Dolby Atmos and actually control all of our sources, inputs, summing, switching, fold downs, talkback, everything from a simple tablet running Avid control. We've also included a subset of the optional card that you can add to Matrix, which is called SPQ. We've actually built that in to the Matrix Studio, and that allows you a pool of filters to be able to enable bass management and do speaker tuning in your room. So that's another thing that we're super excited, and delays actually. You can do lip sync delays and compensation delays. So if we talk about monitoring a little bit on the box, you can see right on the front we've got dual headphones, so we can figure out what sources, again, you're routing to each person for talent. We talked about the speaker EQ and bass management a bit. Now this box is able to monitor in Dolby Atmos, whether you're working in 712, 714, all the way up to 916. As a result of all of the analog line outputs that we have. We also have the ability to trigger talkback directly from a foot switch. And then, as I said, integrated directly with Yukon, having a ton of functionality thereof. So super excited. This in conjunction with HDX or HD native and the Dolby Audio Bridge workflows that allows you to have an Atmos renderer in software on the same workstation doing full Atmos, monitoring back through a tuned Atmos monitoring environment is really pretty incredible to do this all on one workstation. So Matrix Studio enables that functionality. Want to talk briefly about, since we're gonna go into some new post-production features, new functionality in Pro Tools, we're going to talk about kind of what we just released not so long ago. And part of this was in combination, in alliance with Netflix, with their Post Technology Alliance, basically expanding what you can do in Pro Tools for post-production. One of those things was working with Dolby to turn on Dolby Audio Bridge, being able to stream out 128 channels full via a Dolby Audio Bridge playback engine into the renderer, so that is really cool. We also have this simplified asset delivery, which is basically one WAV file with timestamps, we can literally take all of our 5171s, LTRTs, all of our assets, and basically export that as a single time-stamped file that gets reconstituted back into another workstation, ensuring that all the pieces are there when you send it over the network, and it's just a much better way of delivering assets. Expanded video engine support for 4K, UHD, a lot of great stuff. So what we want to do now is we want to dig into some additional hardware.
That's right. So Jeff mentioned that Matrix and Matrix Studio had these multiple DigiLink ports on them that needed to connect up to HDX, HD native. And one of the things with a lot of these modern computers out there today that don't have PCI slots in them, they're all based on Thunderbolt 3. So we're happy to announce at the show that we are coming out with a new HDX Thunderbolt 3 chassis, single slot in either a desktop or a rack mount configuration that allows you to easily put a card in there, connect it up via Thunderbolt 3 to your computer, and have a nice compact system. With the rack mount version of it, we can actually even put one of the new Mac Minis in there to make a very, very powerful system that fits in a one rack space unit. We're going to be selling these a la carte, meaning that if you already have a card and want to add one of these to your existing system, not a problem. But we're also going to be selling these as bundles, basically taking the chassis, the HDX card, the software, the Pro Tools Ultimate software, and bundling that either with a Matrix Studio or an HD Omni interface. So a lot of great ways to get into this new technology.
Absolutely. So let's talk about folder tracks. This is upcoming Pro Tools 2020. We're super excited. We've done Gil's got an amazing music demo that he does using music production. But for this particular example, we want to talk about post. And certainly anybody that's worked in post-production knows that there's lots and lots of pieces, assets, elements, units, AAFs, temps, refs, all kinds of pieces that can bloat your session, right? You can have a really fragmented looking timeline. So we really believe that folder tracks is going to allow you to navigate really hairy, really complex sessions a lot more efficiently.
Right, and we're actually going to kind of take you through that right now. So session we're going to be using today kind of is taking a video of a bartender making, kind of doing some fancy bar work with a shaker glass. And instead of creating sound design to it that's more literal, we want to do something that's more stylized. So we're going to be using a lot of different effects and things. But to start out, we basically started with no audio whatsoever. And Jeff, at his home studio, basically took a Matrix with a microphone and be able to basically create a bunch of different raw assets. Now, these raw assets basically are on a source track. So if we look here, Jeff was able to open up the assets folder, and then in that we have two different subfolders. So if we open up the source folder, now you can see that he's recorded multi-channel audio, stereo MS audio, and mono audio for all these source elements that allows him to do some processing on them that either can be mono, stereo, or all the way up to 7.1 surround. And have all this organized in a single routing folder. So basically we can see that this routing folder doesn't have to just be mono or stereo. It can actually be up to as wide of a bus as we can have, up to 7.1.2 if we were even working in Atmos.
Yeah, and all the assets you can see are self-contained. They're tucked away in this little folder. You can actually get a visual representation of all of the hierarchies when everything is collapsed, which is really, really great to be able to see that. So underneath the source, I've also got samples. And the samples is basically taking the best pieces of the Foley and essentially chopping that up into, okay, this is a hand manipulation of the shaker. Okay, this is the two pieces of the shaker coming together. Okay, this is basically like a whoosh of the actual shaker going through the air. And I just chopped it all up and put it on the timeline. And so basically now what we can do is we can export this. And so why are we exporting it? Why don't we just start dragging clips around and work to picture? Well, there's actually a really, really powerful tool that if you're current with Pro Tools, everybody here has. And I have to admit, I hadn't spent enough time with it either. But it's insane, and it's really powerful. It's called Falcon. And it is not just a synthesizer. It's not just a sample playback device, but it's it could be like a synclavier where I can just dump a bunch of sound effects in and actually start manipulating and playing by triggering a MIDI keyboard.
Right. So Falcon, like he said, is not just a sample player, but it's a super powerful sampler. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go into a design folder and start working towards kind of building the stylized sound design for this video. So where are you going to start, Jeff?
Well, I think what we want to do first, if you're not familiar with the searching capabilities in Pro Tools, you need to start. Whether you're looking for a track preset, a bus, or in this case, I'm actually just going to look for, Falcon. I'm literally going to just start typing, and there is my Falcon. So if you've got a million different compressors installed on your rig, you need to search, because it's a beautiful thing. So basically, this pops up. This is our workstation, and this is going to serve as our sampler to bring those Foley elements in and just map them across the keys. And I'll show you how simple this is. This is not hard at all. On the right side here, you're seeing basically all of the individual samples. Okay, all these individual pieces, and I just want to do some mapping. So let's just do this. Let's make a new program, and let's actually add a layer. Okay, and we're going to drag some of the resonant cocktail shaker stuff in here, and just select it. Just select a range of stuff. There you go, and drag it down to the keyboard. I'm going to say let's start at C0. I'm going to actually hold down the Option key, and the reason is check this out. You can say chromatically, white keys, black keys, metadata. It'll actually look at the name of the file. All kinds of cool stuff. I'm going to do black keys just to make it simple. And I can literally click on any of these elements. And what this does for me now is this gives me the flexibility of being able to trigger from keys on my MIDI controller. Now, why? Well, I can actually do trimming in here. I can determine offsets of what gets triggered. I can actually change the playback direction. I can reverse any of the samples in here. Right, I can actually do pitch offsets. I can do modulation. I can do all kinds of cool stuff. And that's the Foley that I recorded, but now I've got more creative ways to manipulate it. It's kind of the idea, right? So I want to now take advantage of track presets to, on top of the sampler, add a bunch of processing like limiter, maybe some EQ, and maybe some creative stuff as well. So all I've got to do is basically come over here, and let's just bring up kind of my stack, if you will, of processing, which is going to be like a track limiter from DMG. And it's going to be some EQ, and then even some creative stuff. Gil said, you know what, it's not just about hard effects, it's about, hey, why don't we be creative? And this gives me kind of that weird, ethereal, fun manipulations, right? And you can see all the color-coded individual parts. And this is just the first of a bunch of different layers that we're going to start working with. Okay, so that's all triggering from one Falcon. So check this out. Leveraging MIDI parts that are nested under a routing folder, using Falcon, downstream processing, I can basically collapse that. Let's go downstream to the whooshes now. I'm going to open up whooshes. It's a whole other subcategory. And these are now triggering from a completely different Falcon. Now, there's also a new feature in here that's killer. Check out this little squiggly, like, breakpoint line. This is showing you, allowing you to open up all your modulation stuff simultaneously. So if I'm actually doing a pitch manipulation, which is what I'm doing here, you can actually do a pitch bend within the note. That's what this is right here. So,
and you could do that before, but it really took a lot of mousing around and going through different layers to get there. Now with this simple little icon widget on the track window, you can just click that and it all just appears instantaneously.
Let's open the catches.
So one thing Jeff is actually doing here, there's a lot of really great key commands that we've added recently in Pro Tools to allow you to basically go between and manipulate your MIDI without having to mouse around. It makes it very, very quick editing, so you can easily just do it all from your keyboard.
Yep, exactly. So figure out what you want to do there, and then let's collapse that back. Let's take a look at the joins. And the joins is kind of when the pieces come together, right? I can pitch shift, and I can add modulation. I can do any of that. And again, if you collapse everything, you still have a visual representation of what's there. And then the last piece we've got here are whips. So think of these it's basically like a whoosh, right? Of the actual shaker kind of going through the air. So that's kind of fun. So kind of here's a little bit of kind of what we have. Okay, so here's the problem. I know Gil's going to mix this. He's going to add backgrounds. He's going to add some music. He's going to add a bunch of other elements. He doesn't want my MIDI. He doesn't want all these complex individual MIDI notes and modulation and parts linked to multiple Falcons. He wants audio.
Absolutely. Audio tracks is where a mixer wants to live. Don't want to have to deal with a bunch of libraries and things. You just want to get down to the art of mixing.
Yep. So here's all you got to do. This is really powerful. These are all... So we got a nested folder structure, right? You got design. Under design is resin. Under resin are all the MIDI parts for that Falcon. Under whoosh are all those parts, and it's all sub-contained. So all we got to do here is basically say, let's do a commit. So you can also freeze. If you were just trying to free up or kind of isolate one thing, you could freeze as well. But we're going to do a selected tracks. I'm going to keep the originals there for now, and we're basically going to commit. Commit is render, print, and then make essentially new assets, new tracks. And we're going to do it on the selected track. So here we go. Let's do it offline as fast as we can. I'm going to say, yeah. Let's continue. And it's going to print and turn all those into audio assets, audio rendered elements, right? That I can actually give to Gil. So check it out. You can see resin. You can see whoosh, catch. Now, this is pretty kind of hairy right now, but check this out. All you've got to do is right-click, and I can see all of my possible destination folders. Check this out, right? Move it. You can move up or down the tree up to 9 different levels, right? As a maximum kind of hierarchy. I'm just going to say move all this into stems and clean it up. And check it out. I collapsed design, and I now have a stems folder right here with all those stems we just made. Here's all my BGs. I got some room tone in there. Here's all my rendered stems. And let's just play this real quick. Okay, so just all kind of creative design using MIDI, but the ability to structure everything. And when we collapse all this down, check this out. Let's actually take it one step further here. I want to show you a couple other bits that are in the session. All of my effects, right? So you're hearing kind of the ambience of a bar / kitchen, and that's all sub-contained within the effects folder. And
that's a surround reverb, right?
Yeah, and this is an example. In this particular application, this is just a basic folder, right? It's just a way to throw all my effects in there and kind of get it out of the way. And that's all sub-contained. And then we've also got the mains, right? Your submix, your master, and that's a multi-channel Pro L2. And then everything collapses down. So it is, I don't know if, I'm totally OCD. So this is a really cool thing. The other thing I want to show you, which is pretty wild, is take a look at the design track. I'm actually tabbing through the edit boundaries in the design track. You could literally define a selection and do basic conforms, cuts, duplicates, copies, repeats on the folder. So as long as you know what you're doing and you're not doing something bad, but you could, if you wanted to conform, like, remove a second chorus or duplicate a chunk of assets, that's exactly what you're doing right there. So we're pretty stoked about the possibilities of how people are going to use this feature in Pro Tools 2020.
Absolutely. So being able to take just super complex sessions before that had tracks and tracks and tracks that you had to scroll through, really pay attention to where things are, can be easily distilled down into just a small number of containers of these folders, whether the basic or routing folders, and very easily now go through and navigate exactly where you want to with just a couple of mouse clicks, and it really, really is going to help with organization and actually your creative flow.